Yo, not looking to make this another long video. Just had to comment really quickly on a few interactions I had on Twitter with some liberals and anarchists, specifically about the gray zone. Um, Basically, and the topic was there was no topic. Not really. I mean, there was a topic, I suppose. They said the gray zone was rifting, and they presented no evidence. The one piece of evidence they presented was in the case of Max Blumenthal speaking at a conference about. It was like a 1 minute clip, a little bit longer, speaking at a conference about right wing media. It was actually incredibly concise. It was very concise. He talked about a lot, but packaged it, very briskly. Very cogent, and ultimately a very correct. Analysis of alternate media on the right, of right wing independent media, and how he basically said he was inculcating a fourth group of Americans that was not liberal, conservative, or center, but that was just essentially its own brand of conspiratorial rightism. And he was proven totally right. He said that in 2015. He was proven totally right about that in light of recent events. And they took that clip and said, because he was describing this alternate right media, and said he was basically admitting to grifting right there. You're going to think I'm making things up. I'm not. It's absolutely absurd. And I tried to talk to these people, and just the cognitive dissonance and the jumping to conclusions and the assuming things that were just obviously not true and acting like they were just seeing reality was honestly shocking to me. And I got into a Twitter conversation with one of these liberals, and I mean, had a brief back and forth about, whatever. I had a conversation. I don't need to get into the details of it, but just horrible misinformation. And like they'll take singular instances of that are in dispute, like the white helmets. Like we can get into that. I have my own malformed opinion, but the white helmets are. I mean, that was basically what most of the conversation was about, mixed in with small things that were like large pieces about how there's Russian-funded misinformation campaigns about Syria and the white helmets, but the larger ones would cover the white helmets and other things. Honestly, I didn't read them. The majority of sources he put out were about the white helmets, and we can have a conversation about that specifically, but it is indisputable at this point, if you've done any legitimate research that isn't going and seeing what the Washington Post says, even just cursory, easy Wiki. I mean, this is going to sound very stupid, but honestly, Wikipedia searching is enough to get you to raise some eyebrows. Let alone the amount of reporting that's come out at this point in time. There is no moderate opposition. There is no real Syrian opposition at this point. When I say that last part, I don't say that confidently, but what I will say is if you analyze the spending habits of Western governments like America or the UK, and specifically their spending habits regarding the opposition groups they fund in Syria illegally, there's no legal precedent for that. I mean, there's illegal precedent for that, a lot of it. You're not legally allowed to do that. That doesn't matter, though. The groups they fund, just a cursory glance at them, and you find out, oh, they're just repackaged jihadists. I mean, specifically, I mean, because Al Nusra is the largest force there, or at least was during 2017, 2018, at least a major force. I don't know for sure. But there were open clashes between, what was it, Brotherhood of Righteousness, Farsan al Haq, whatever, and they were fighting against. You basically find out they had made a pact with Al Nusra, and you come to find out you match the dates up, and when they're mentioned in articles, specifically there's an article about CIA supporting um, Farhan al Haq, whatever, and them being fought off by Pentagon-backed Syrian Democratic Forces. And when you match up the timeline, basically what that means is they were fought off by Al Nusra. The Pentagon funded Al Nusra, and the CIA funded whatever this. They're all jihadists. It's a hotbed of imported jihadists to a large degree. I don't know how many Syrian jihadists there are, but certainly a number. Then again, the war has been over a decade long. It is it is this mixture of jihadist forces from within and without of Syria, and that is obvious. You look at it's made even more obvious by the fact that, um, yeah, in the leaks regarding the mainly UK firms, independent firms that would run propaganda on behalf of these various groups, and there are a number of them. They're all just repackaged jihadists. They have various names. They're not real groups regardless. And all of they have these like before and after pictures of like say flyers, and before it's like very disturbing, very disturbing. Something you would expect from a jihadist, and afterwards it's much more polished. And specifically, getting them to change their language in video. You dig into into the documents, you dig into them. They're available, publicly, and Grayson does do a great analysis of it, and you find that yeah, basically all the instances of their propagandization have to do with these British firms making them more appealing to Western audiences because what they are is jihadists. Those are historically the groups we fund anyway. If you look at Afghanistan, I mean, we basically funded the landlord class and various reactionary elements, and that's why I mean the Taliban's the only force that's of any note in Afghanistan now because we funded what is it, Mujahideen forces at the time, and they, as one, I forget the official's name. I wish I had the name because I'm giving you a quote without a name, which is pointless, especially because I'm using their clout as a government official. But he said there are no moderate forces in Afghanistan or Iraq, whatever he was saying. These will let the crazies kill them all. That was our policy, and to think it's changed now is just absolute foolishness. Um, what is the point of all of this? Oh yeah, the point is twofold. Um, is just to say how much time? 7 minutes. That's not too bad. Is just to say that um, this this fetishization of hating on these anti-imperialist sources. I know I've talked mainly about the gray zone, and you have better standing when it comes to actual state sources. We'd be having a different conversation, I admit, but they hate on these sources, and it's so just not based in reality when you do even the slightest bit of research, especially with their ideas about like Syrian forces. Just doing any research, even just to like the news sources, like what is it? Like I'm going to say to look at a news source. I can't even remember the name. Um, there are various mainstream news sources that come from Middle Eastern countries. There's one in specific here, Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera. Even just looking into their coverage, and they make it more clear. I mean, it's obvious, and so I guess the point is just that it's annoying that they don't understand all of these things, but also that I don't want to use Lenin's words too flippantly, so I say this I say this with a bit of reservation. I don't know if I'm using the word correctly, but from how I understand the term social chauvinism, I think to try to draw to try to draw to try to draw my very minor Twitter inconvenience back to theory, because any minor task or inconvenience I'm confronted with has to be drawn back to Leninist scrolls, because everything I do is significant. But no, seriously, I think I mean, I think you can call these people social chauvinists, and I think the critique that Lenin has of the social chauvinists in his day, from what I understand, he describes them as socialists, in name and espousing the same values, but essentially being affected with the sort of chauvinism that, um, what's the word, affected them with sort of myopia. They couldn't see broadly. They believed the propaganda of, I suppose, what wouldn't he? I think he was using the term broadly, but in his case would be, in Russia. Um, yeah, and it's a form of leftism that proclaims all the same values but believes all the propaganda, basically. And that's what this affliction is, because you're just perpetually buying into the, and they threw the babies out of the incubators. I mean, we've seen this play out before. In that case, it was a UK firm, I believe. I forget the name. In that case too, with that young girl, member of the royal family of Iraq. Yes, yeah, I believe it was a UK firm as well. I mean, you can only see these things so many times and not understand that there's a pattern here. Which is not to say you can never go against the pattern, not to say it's, all encompassing, but we've seen this play out before. Was the Mujahideen some no. What were they? Were they moderate forces? No, they were fascist Islamists funded by Americans, and used to great effect. And the same thing is happening in Syria. And if you think that's not the case, you are lying. No, you're not lying to yourself. You're allowing yourself to be lied to by American imperialist propagandists. And I mean, I don't understand how someone, specifically the person I spoke to, can claim to read Manufacturing Consent, understand the takeaways from that book, perhaps one of the biggest ones being that free democratic systems can produce propaganda systems that any dictatorship would be envious of. Have understand the conclusions of that book, which a lot of liberals and anarchists do, but still take this stand um, when it comes to anti-imperialist media, when it comes to scandals like the Gray Zone receiving thousands of dollars. I believe it was what, 20,000? No, that was Kasich. So however many thousands of dollars, and Jimmy Dore receiving however many thousands of dollars from a pro-Assadist group. Yeah, that's the problem here. We have to watch out for the billion-dollar industry devoted to propagandizing Americans in favor of, American imperialism and upholding, American dominance. But watch out for those thousands of dollars from Assad, because that's the dual struggle that the American left is faced with. Securing ourselves from American imperialism and from Assadist imperialism and his thousands of dollars. Just absurd. And the smugness from these people, acting as though I'm in some sort of cult, making these brash assumptions about what I think, is just absurd. And it's somewhat ironic seeing the degree to which they're propagandized, but the dual degree to which they feel like they have to save you from your own cultish propagandization. Of course, not actually willing to devote any energy to it though, because I DM'd this person and said, by the way, why don't you Zoom call me? And then say, why would I do that? I said, because conversation is free flowing and quick. And they said, anyway, basically, typical of liberals. Oh, you're in a cult, and I feel bad for you. Good luck, man. Want to take 5 minutes and talk to me about it? Anyway, I'll end the video on that. I really dislike liberals, and social chauvinists. It's a new word I'm going to use for these people. Suck.